All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our monthly live stream with Steve Wright talking all about gut health and just these different topics. And after last month's talk, we talked about food intolerances and the gut, which that's linked. If you guys want to watch, it's linked underneath this video. There's a whole ton of topics that Steve and I have covered, but I really wanted to dive into this topic of skin health because I see so many people just struggling with things like, I mean, anything from acne to eczema, psoriasis, just dry, cracked, flaky skin, those types of things. And I really wanted to explore the gut connection. So thanks for being here today, Steve.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Thanks for having me back. And yeah, I'm excited to talk about this topic because it's actually near and dear to my struggles as a teen and as an adult. So
Same. I would love to hear your story, and maybe I could delve into mine a little bit before we jump into all the technical stuff, technical jargon.
yeah, well, I have not tried it all because there's since been the last like 10 to 15 years new ideas and new creams and things that have come out
Mm.
for acne. And I did not try Accutane because my mom was like, she had a line in the sand where she didn't trust doctors, thankfully. And Accutane, she looked
Mm.
at and she was like, that's bad. That's toxic.
Good. That's
But
good.
I did everything. I did everything for cystic acne starting like at 13 or so. Um, Proactive, all the creams, all the rituals, all the steps. And then went to dermatologists, tried various types of antibiotics, ended up on the strongest antibiotic that they recommended at the time, which is Bactrim DS, which is a
Mhm.
broad spectrum, pretty powerful. So DS stands for double strength. So I started at regular and then I got upgraded.
Wow.
And that kind of made a little bit of a difference. And I was so desperate to, fit in, be attractive, not have all these blemishes all over my face because it looked like kind of like a pepperoni pizza. And I thought there wasn't a big deal. I stayed on it for almost 4 years, and then I woke up in a hospital one day after I passed out at work because basically it had wiped out my entire microbiome, and bifidobacter had basically grown in
Mm.
its place. And so I stopped antibiotics at that point, clearly, because I was like, oh man, those things are toxic. But I was still young and continued with all types of cleansers from Europe and all over the place, just trying to figure out what's the right cleansing, moisturizing, killing retinol cream package. And it wasn't until I actually handled my health from the inside out that
Mhm.
at like 24, 25, when my skin finally started to clear up.
Wow. Yeah, that's great that that it started finally in your 20s, but that's such a, I mean, just myself having that just kind of similar experience as a kid. I remember when Proactive was in vending machines at the mall. Did you ever?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's how popular it was. And that, I mean, I never really saw anybody that used Proactive that really got great results or kind of went through and did all the different things from dermatologists. I mean, I started going to a dermatologist when I was like 2 years old because I had such severe eczema as a child that it would happen usually in the winter and sometimes in the spring. Like I would get eczema on the insides of my arms, on the backs of my knees, and it would literally get so bad that it would crack and bleed. The acne wasn't horrible, but it was still annoying. I did have some cystic acne, and that was actually caused by an IUD that I didn't know the
mm,
IUD was causing it. When I got the IUD out, the cystic acne was gone, but I had to go on. When you said Bactrim, I was like, yeah, that was the only thing that would get these giant, like painful welts on my face to just go away, right? But
totally.
yeah, it's the worst. But that this it's your skin, it's what people see. And so I think a lot of people carry a lot of stigma with the skin health stuff. And for me, I struggled with eczema. I couldn't even wear my wedding ring after I got married because I still had the eczema really bad. And it wasn't until I went on a complete elimination diet with carnivore that the eczema was like totally gone. And I was like, the first
Oh,
time in my
nice.
life, I didn't have it. And it was amazing. But a couple years into carnivore, it started coming back. It started creeping back in. And that was when I actually met you and started working on my gut health. Besides just doing an elimination diet, I had to do some extra things to work on my gut health. And thank God that I did, because now I haven't had a trace of any of that stuff. But I think it was just kind of doing the carnivore diet, seeing my skin drastically clear up, this lifelong issue I had with eczema go away. And then that experience a couple years into carnivore was creeping back up, and I had to really look at my gut and kind of deal with it before I really understand, oh man, there really has got to be quite a connection here between gut and skin, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's starting. People are starting to make sense of it, but I wish that people spent even half as much money on supplements for their gut health as they do for creams and like outward in, because we've been trained that, and it makes sense. The skin is right here. Like, it makes
Hmm.
sense that if you have pain right here, you have a rash, that you'd want to put something topically
On it.
on it,
Yeah.
and it will maybe, heal it or take it away or whatever. That makes intuitive sense, and we've been trying that for what, like 50 years or something,
Hmm.
and I don't really think it's worked. I mean, some of the anti-aging stuff I think is helping, but
Yeah.
um, around like wrinkles or water retention in the skin, there's some good evidence there, but not necessarily for rosacea, eczema, unexplained rashes, acne. Um, it seems like it's more of an inside job. And I think people watching this have already probably identified that if you have these skin things, you probably already know that maybe the reason why you're carnivore is like you notice dairy,
Yeah. Dairy
when
was
you
a
you
huge
know
one. Yep.
so a lot of people sort of associate that dairy with skin problems, whether it's rashes
Hmm.
or acne or whatever. And so just the fact that you already know that you can modify your skin by what you eat, the only way that works is it's got to go to the gut, to the immune system, to
Hmm.
the skin. So like
Yep.
that's how the communication lines go. And so you already recognize that your gut health is directly tied to how your skin looks. And so hopefully today we can go a little deeper on these topics, share some of the new research that's come out in the last 5 years, where the industry's going, what you can do now that modifies the gut, and that modifies your skin, basically.
Yeah, I think it's really exciting that we're starting to kind of understand how these things play into each other. And I'm excited to hear about some of this, especially I know we're going to kind of look at it from a couple points of view. The first point of view, probably more of what you mentioned earlier with taking the antibiotic and it wiping out that beneficial bacteria. So there's a bacterial side, and then there's also just a structural kind of digestive side as well, I think, that comes into play. So we'll try to cover both of those, but I would love to hear about how, gut bacteria and bacteria byproducts and how that really affects the health of the skin in a more of a detailed way.
Yeah. Well, I'll share as much as I understand at this point, and I don't know that there's many people that understand more. The ones that are the actual researchers doing the research studies. Um, But what we've deduced so far, I think, as a population of humans, is that the bugs inside of our gut are always cross talking with our skin through our immune system. So, our immune system, think of our immune system as sort of the communication channel, or the Facebook or the WhatsApp or whatever
Hmm.
communication platform between two people. And so these two people are the gut microbiome and the skin, and how it looks and how it acts. And so the immune system is always sampling the gut to find out what's happening. Like every second, it's sort of sampling and finding out where are we at with life. What sort of, is there food coming towards us? Is there pollen? Is it what's happening? And then it's talking to the skin and the rest of the body. And so I think a long time ago, people noticed or hypothesized that if we took antibiotics and we altered the types of bacteria, and what's really important is what those bacteria give off, so the metabolites of
Mm.
the bacteria. And these are usually these like organic acids. They're very new. I mean, if you've heard of organic acid tests, which I think you've
Yep.
talked about, that's like measuring what, like 84 or 74 of them with Great Plains. There's probably like maybe over 100 now that we can measure commercially. We're still just trying to figure out how many of these there are, what do they actually do.
Mm-hmm.
But certain of them, including one called phenol, are linked to sort of aggregating. Like the certain species like Clostridia give these off as they eat our nutrients, and then they accumulate in the gut, and then they somehow accumulate up at the skin layer. And when they accumulate at the skin layer, think about your right below both layers, your skin as well as your gut, is the immune system. Like right below, remember there's the there's the
Mm-hmm.
WhatsApp that going from one end to the other. And when these like non-desirable organic acids build up both in the gut as well as near the skin, because they go systemic, the immune system becomes agitated and on high alert. There's too many sort of inflammatory molecules and not enough anti-inflammatory or break immune molecules. And so as these bacteria eat our food, take our nutrients, and if we have the wrong mixtures, they skew basically the inflammatory potential, and then therefore how the skin acts. Like, does it excrete too much oil? Does it not retain enough water? Is there just a overreaction to, say, bumping into a log or getting some poison ivy? Have you ever seen like somebody in the family reacts extremely aggressively to poison ivy? It
Oh
takes
yeah.
over the,
My
and then other
sister
people.
gets it terribly, and I never have gotten it in my life. Like we could be walking in the same area, the next day she's covered, and I'm like, what happened? I'm fine. Yeah.
Yeah, so part of that differential response, part of it, not the whole thing, is the gut health and immune health, and how fast can the immune system contain that. And it has a bunch of antimicrobial peptides underneath your skin. How fast can it contain that and then reduce the swelling, reduce the inflammation before it takes over everything? And that linkage, the gut bacteria are sort of always modifying those antimicrobial peptides near your skin. They're always modifying how many inflammatory or anti-inflammatory immune markers are up there. And then in response to that, we have differentials in oil, in water, in the types of microbiome that's allowed on the skin. And so it is really complex, but hopefully that's like a better picture of the crosstalk that's happening and why taking in dairy, if you can't break it down, we can go through that, but it'll end up traveling all the way up to the skin and aggregating sort of a more inflammatory or more reactive experience in response to anything.
Yep. Yeah, I see a lot of people that go to a carnivore diet, and I think that was kind of what was happening with me, and they start eating a lot of pasteurized dairy because it's carnivore, and then they start having the issues with their skin. I see people still struggling with psoriasis, which is a real serious one. I mean, it's like eczema times 100. It's terrible to deal with. I know a lot of people with it. But for me, I did not eat dairy when I first started carnivore at all. And that's why I think I was able to kind of stop having those reactions. But now, we'll keep talking about this, gut health topic. But now, I mean, just before I got on here, I had a big glass of raw milk and I'm totally fine. Like I can drink raw milk, eat raw cheese. My skin is better than ever. So, yeah, I think that people kind of don't make that correlation sometimes of how those things are just really, truly affecting the skin for sure. Yeah.
And each one of those conditions, whether it's psoriasis or eczema or acne, or just unexplained rashes, to the person, because I've experienced some of those, not all of those, it's like a really big deal.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like issues, there's routines, there's different makeups, there's different creams, there's prescriptions, there's, after 10 or 20 years of it, there's aging issues that come along with it. And it's basically aggregated damage to your skin or any organ, but in this case, it's the skin. So, but they tend to think of them as separate, right? Like, and the research does show that there's differences between each of these conditions and each of these issues, but they're all characterized by a shift. Like there's several research papers now on this, and one that just came out in early 2021 showing that each one of these has a dysbiosis linked to it. And
Okay.
all of them have a disrupted immune marker pathway towards inflammatory immune markers linked to it. So they have different other specifics and different criterias around this one's more inflammatory, this one's more autoimmune related, but they're all characterized by those two sort of tree trunks. Everything else is just the branches and the fruit and the leaves. But it always comes back to a disrupted gut microbiome, it appears, as well as a disrupted immune system.
Okay. So it's twofold then. But they kind of play
Yes.
off of one another a little bit as well, right?
Right, which is what we just talked about, that if
Yep.
you have a dysbiotic microbiome or you have
And you're
SIBO or something, if you have bad stuff going on in the small intestine, you're just going to drive your immune system you're going
into
to
the
drive it
ground.
haywire.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So what kind of thing can we do to help this issue with the bacteria and the immune system? Like what would that look like for someone who is just in the middle of struggling with that type of an issue? What would you recommend?
Well, I mean, we've talked about, step one is always dietary modification.
Diet.
So,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
but step one, it's not a cure. It doesn't work
Right.
forever or for everyone. So if you've gone carnivore, great. If you're still having the issues, you might start, going on to step two, or maybe you add back in certain foods. It's kind of up to you, but at a minimum, you got to go on some type of elimination diet that reduces
Mhm.
down carbohydrates, and especially processed carbohydrates and grains. So there's a ton of linkage between processed foods
Yep.
driving up, just because of how it works. Like, people don't really grasp it, and it's boring, and I get it. And processed foods are so delicious, so freaking delicious.
I
Even
think
gluten
people on
free.
my channel are going to be cool with the idea of not eating processed foods. Most people
But,
watching are probably kind of bought into the fact that we probably shouldn't be eating those that are
but
watching this, hopefully.
hopefully, here's the
Yep.
rub though. Even processed, organic, gluten-free foods are bad. And
Oh,
that's the rub.
yep,
And the
I
reason
agree.
why, I mean, they're delicious. I eat them from time to time. I get it. I can fall into like little traps when I'm stressed. But there's been new papers that literally show how even gluten-free processed
Yep.
organic foods are stripping out the fibers, the phytonutrients, the polysaccharides that are important for fermentation for the right bacteria. And when you do that, you're left with these really dense, hard, small carbohydrate structures that are organic and gluten-free.
Right.
Um,
And then I wonder how many of them also have seed oils in them as well that are hiding.
I mean, they could, but I'm not worried about that. If from a
Really?
gut health perspective, microscopic amounts of seed oils isn't great. But the fact that you're losing, I'm not saying you should eat seed oils. I'm not pro
Right.
seed oils, but I'm just saying it's actually the carbohydrate. It's the stripping out of the whole food part
Got it.
of these carbohydrates that, at least in this storyline, is even worse than driving up a little bit of inflammation with seed oils. It's
Interesting.
you're creating the conditions for a dysbiotic bacteria by eating the processed structures.
Yeah.
The
So like
bacteria.
the keto bars or the
Totally.
gluten-free. Yeah, I see so many people that try those out and they're like their gut turns into a mess. It's never good. Yeah,
Yeah, and look, I'm no saint. I don't eat whole foods every step of the
right.
day. I do use bars every once in a while, especially while traveling. So I'm not going to stand on a pedestal here, but I am talking to myself as well as talking to other people who fall into these traps of eating one meal a day,
Mhm.
whether you're keto, paleo. I mean, it'd be really hard carnivore style, but
Oh, I know
you know,
people that do that, but yeah.
if you
Yeah,
start relying on these stripped down foods, there are consequences, even if it's
yeah,
organic, gluten free, you know, blessed by the world. And so that is shown in the research literature that it drives inflammation, it drives dysbiotic bacteria. It doesn't matter how clean the source is. Eating too much of this stuff, like, the keto cereal craze that's going on right now,
oh lord, that stuff is bad.
yeah, like if you get
Terrible.
caught in a life where you're eating keto cereal in the morning or for lunch. You're having a few keto bars during,
Mhm.
your lunch day, or you're running from appointment to appointment. You finish with a wholesome whole food meal, and then a nice little gluten-free cupcake or cookie or something before bed. That entire day is set up to have bad gut health, bad immune health, and bad skin health.
Yep,
And it sucks because it's
absolutely.
delicious, but it's not what the body was intended, and you're not going to get the health you desire. I mean, I'm assuming you desire health if you're listening to this.
Yep,
Otherwise, it's probably just torturing yourself. And so I didn't want to hear that. I don't love telling people that, but that's literally the biological truth of this stuff.
yep, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's people like they love these foods. But they're processed foods, even though they're like quote unquote healthy. And so what you're saying basically is that these can also throw off the gut microbiome just as bad, if not worse, than some of the other processed foods that are out there, right?
I'm not going to say it's worse, but it's the same.
Similar.
Yeah, it's similar because other processed foods will have, seed oils in them and more
Hmm.
preservatives and maybe worse preservatives or other crazy junk, right? Because, a $2 bar versus a $6 bar, it's going to have higher quality nutrients, but,
Right.
it's still a bar. And
Right.
if you're trying to get rid of rashes, acne, things like this, and you got to be willing to like go 30 days without that kind of
Yep.
stuff to really find out what's possible here.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I had to do. And it was not easy, but I just literally ate meat and no dairy. I did have eggs. Eggs were not a bothersome thing for me, but some people even need to cut the eggs out too. And I mean, that was the first time in my life that I didn't have that debilitating eczema in the winter time. And I could wear my wedding ring again just in a few weeks. So obviously, and I don't know that, and I didn't stay super meat only permanently, but I think that, yeah, first step with the skin health is elimination diet. And you may not need to go as strict as I did, but I would definitely cut out dairy. I think that can be pasteurized dairy, especially, can be a huge offender. And even the raw dairy is great. I eat raw dairy all the time. But if you're really trying to just do this, it's what's 30 days going to do? Can you go without it for 30 days, right? So that you can start seeing a little bit of a difference, would you say?
Yeah, and look, there's hope here. The hope is that both of our stories say that we went on a stricter elimination diet, and now we've sort of made changes we can talk a little bit about here in a second that
Yep.
allow us now more freedom to choose raw dairy or pasteurized dairy or a processed gluten-free pizza from time to time and not experience acne, rashes, psoriasis, things like that. But
Hmm.
we had to get rid of that accumulation of those inflammatory
Yes.
um, immune compounds near our skin. We had to get rid of the ongoing either leaky gut and or dysbiotic bacteria and or low stomach acid or low enzymes. We had to like heal up everything to give our bodies the tolerance to be able to do more life, and that may
Right.
include cheating. And, I had a full-on gluten-free hot dog with like grass-fed hot dogs for 4th of July, and I did it, but I didn't
Yeah.
suffer for it because I've been working on my gut health and addressing the
Yeah.
root causes for like over 10 years. So
Right.
you can get some flexibility back to participate in
Definitely.
social events, but it's pretty much going to require at least 30 days of like
Yep.
clamping down. You got to let your skin and your gut sort of rest and just reduce its inflammatory potential.
Yep. I agree. I totally agree. So, first step diet. Then, let's say, would you have somebody attack the bacteria side first, or would you have them address, let's say, like low stomach acid, enzymatic function? Because I know that that also, the elimination part plays into our skin health. If we're not going to the bathroom properly or we're going to the bathroom too much, those things can also be a factor in affecting skin health, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think I didn't really give the skin its proper love until a few years ago when I started researching. I mean, the skin is a temperature regulation, it is immune health as in it's keeping bugs and bad things from getting into you. It's also detoxification. It's also hydration. So the skin is a pretty cool organ. It really is an organ. And it's doing a lot of jobs, as I just mentioned. The lower part of your gut, as well as your bladder and your kidneys, are your main detoxification. Like pooping and peeing should be like 85-90% of all detoxification. Like that's the last stage of it. Get it out of the body. You don't want to shift that burden onto the skin. The skin's going to be doing a little bit of it every day. A lot of people call it like phase 3 detoxification, where you're basically eliminating the bound toxins or bad things, metabolites. You really don't want to put the burden on the skin, because if you, and how would you do that? You would do that through, being underhydrated. You'd do that through being constipated. You would do that by just having a really bad gut that's producing way too many toxins for your bowels and your bladder to take care of, your kidneys. When you do that, you are just asking for A, more inflammation, and then B, like a disrupted everything on the skin. So that's going to include more rashes, more acne, more dry skin, more, cracking, all these types of issues if you force your skin to act as a major detoxifier. So this is one of the reasons why a lot of people who are constipated notice, skin disruptions with their constipation.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
So what would I do for step one? Or step one was diet. Step two, I would actually start with your stomach. So I would rule out low stomach acid. And the reason why is that we've talked about two main drivers of skin issues through the gut. One is the microbiome being disrupted and producing bad organic acids and other compounds, and two, driving inflammation. And if you're constipated due to low stomach acid, because you're not making enough waves, enough peristalsis to sort of keep the clockwork going down there, that's going to drive inflammation. And then if your stomach acid is off, the type of nutrients that are available for the body tends to skew towards SIBO or yeast overgrowth in the small intestine. So
interesting.
If you have low stomach acid, it's highly correlated to SIBO. You can look at PPI studies and SIBO prevalence. It's over 70%. You can look at other studies with yeast overgrowth and things like this. Basically, the point is, if you don't break down your food appropriately in the stomach, the nature will bloom to eat it for you. And so I think stomach acid is actually probably the next best step to rule out, to help both your gut and your skin happen. It sort of hits all the triangle of issues here.
And low stomach acid can also cause the opposite issue of constipation as well for some people, right?
Yeah. So, think of diarrhea as like the escape hatch for your F-16 here. Everybody's watching Top Gun right now. So, diarrhea is the body just hitting the red button and saying, we got to flush, like get out, run away, bad things are happening. If your body tends towards, hitting the button, that means it's sort of seeing everything in your gut as bad and it can't handle it. Like the number of responders and the equipment it has to deal with the food you ate is not enough. And so its last ability to save you, it thinks it's saving you, it's just to have diarrhea. And so if you can stabilize your stomach acid through something like HCl Guard or other products, you can also help with loose stools and diarrhea as well, because you're helping actually break that down, detoxify any LPS that might be in there or other bacteria that might trigger that sort of release valve. And so, yes, it helps both directions.
Got it. Yeah, because I think we've talked about this a million times before on other live streams, but a lot of people, they're not used to eating as much meat, as you do when you go towards a more meat-based diet. And they don't know that they have low stomach acid because they've never really had to have a lot of stomach acid to process the food that they're eating. And so, or they've never really tested it out. So maybe they're having these issues with their skin. Maybe they're having these other issues, but they'd have no idea how the stomach acid is actually related to that. And so they get in here, they eat all the meat, and they're like, oh my gosh, either, like you said, the constipation or the opposite issue. And so, yeah, I think so that even with the skin or with any of these issues, starting with the stomach acid, it's going to be the most simple thing to test out, right?
Yeah, yeah. And it's not going to, you're not going to just fix your stomach acid and then, your skin is going to clear up in a month. Like it's going to
Right.
be a 6-month process because we're working on the holistic health. We're not
Mm-hmm.
coming in with a prescription drug and saying, here, let's cross off this inflammatory pathway, or let's use an antibiotic and kill all these bugs off.
Mm-hmm.
And then immediately tomorrow we stop that signal of inflammation. And then therefore you start to see it within a week. It's
Right.
gonna happen slowly over 4 to 8 to 6 months, 24 weeks, uh, because we're actually solving it in the way that it was intended. We're not going in with a prescription drug and immediately trying to hit the miracle cure here. So
Right.
people need to be aware of that this is not a plan for, it's not a prescription drug. It doesn't treat any of these issues. Everything we're laying out here is more of a plan to create a really healthy gut, immune, skin pathway that should lead you, like us, to a place where you have really nice skin. I use like a moisturizer every once in a while, if it's really dry, but otherwise
Yeah.
I don't use anything.
Yeah. I use beef tallow on my skin. That's it. I don't, I don't wear makeup. I'm kind of weird in that regard. I don't have a bunch of products. I don't do a bunch of stuff. It's like healthy diet, beef tallow on the skin. works for me very, very, very effectively. So yeah, so the stomach acid piece first, and
Mhm.
then would you go straight to looking at maybe enzymatic function, looking at leaky gut, or would you jump to bacteria, or would you put bacteria last? What would you say?
Well, for people with skin issues who are really focused on this and they want to see a difference in the first, like, say, 60 to 90 days, and like they want to get to a place where they don't use cleansers and cleaners and
Mm-hmm.
all these things, I would go bacteria next with holoimmune.
Okay.
Um, and the reason why is that way we're hitting both sort of legs of the trees, or the two tree trunks, or whatever we want to call them. It's not a great analogy, but the two main channels, which are the bacteria and the inflammatory pathway. You hit both of those by using HCl guard. You also hit both of those when you use something like holoimmune, because the paraprobiotics in holoimmune, one of them is called lactobacillus L92. And L92 has 2 studies with over 50 people, both of them placebo controlled, for eczema as well as for hay fever. And what it showed is that in these people, it basically helps stop IgE production and helps improve the T regulatory cells, like the amount of them. Both of those things are anti-inflammatory to skin conditions. And
Mm.
so if we're working on the gut, taking holoimmune, that again, the sort of WeChat or whatever, the chat funnel here between the two, holoimmune works on that chat funnel, trying to help reduce the inflammation there, trying to help balance it, because the other parts that we could talk about in a second are also very beneficial to the holistic, resilient gut. But I find that with skin, you see it every day. Like every day you're looking at your skin. And if
Mm-hmm.
it's
Oh
really
yeah.
broken out, or if it's really painful on your elbow or wherever, like that sucks. And it can, so I find that people really need to see progress, in 30 to 60 days. Otherwise they're going to move on. And I
Yep.
don't blame them for that. I don't, because I've been there. So that's why I normally say step 3 would be to focus on the immune system, try to reduce the sort of inflammatory potential that's sitting underneath your skin, so that all of the other choices you make, all the other reactions to food, to fabric softeners, to poison ivy, whatever it might be, are going to be tempered and reduced. And if we can do that, plus there's research data on some of these strains for skin conditions that also helps with that, as well as our feedback. I've never seen feedback so skin focused on a gut product.
Mm.
So that's why I typically say, let's start reprogramming the immune system. while we're healing the stomach. And then, the next step would be to just, continue down the line.
Got it. Yeah, I think that's a big one for people, is just understanding that connection of the gut bacteria and the skin, and then how to tackle that. So you think 60 days is a good enough kind of gauge to see the hollow immune start to work in relation to skin?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'd put our guarantee on the line, that
Awesome.
if you took whole immune for 60 days straight, you would see progress. Otherwise, we'll give you your money back. And if you combine it with HCl guard for 60 days, or at least rule out, maybe you don't have low stomach acid, that's even better.
Yep.
But use HCl guard and whole immune for 60 days. I think you're going to see even better results for sure.
Yep. I love that. So what about digestive function? So we've got diet first, and then we jump into looking at stomach acid, which you do something like HCl guard. Then we look at the gut bacteria. Would you jump to digestive function next and maybe some enzymatic support, or would you go to looking at leaky gut?
Um, it can go either way at that point. It would
Mm,
be more of whatever the person's up for.
yeah.
I preferentially go towards digestive function because I want the holistic body to work as it's intended. And
Mm,
so I would probably add in enzymes at that point, or holozymes. The reason being that we're now at, let's say we're at 30 to 45 days on this elimination diet. You're starting to get antsy. You want to add in eggs, you want to add in nuts, you want to add in dairy. Um, Having enzymes on board for that reintroduction phase is very critical to the
oh
success of
gosh,
the
yeah.
reintroduction.
I agree. Yeah, as somebody who did carnivore for a really long time, like 2 years, totally strict, no cheating, no nothing. The holozyme was literally a godsend for me when I started doing food reintroductions, because I would have those days where I'd kind of get excited and maybe eat a little too much of a food that I was reintroducing. And I would take the holozyme, and I was worried that I was going to feel bad for like 4 or 5 days. And I ended up being fine literally the next day. So yeah, if you've done carnivore for a while, or elimination diet period for a while, your body is not going to be used to digesting specific foods. So I think that can be a real help. And then it can help with someone doing carnivore too, because sometimes people are not able to really, again, digest that much protein. Maybe they've got the stomach acid piece working, but the enzymes kind of help in a different way with the protein handling, right?
Totally. So that's where it's holistic, right? So you can look in the
Yep.
research journals and you'll see that increased insulin resistance and increased IGF-1
Mm.
basically cause skin disruptions, especially acne. It's
Ah.
highly linked to acne. Well, if you don't have the right enzyme function and you don't break down your food enough, you're going to drive insulin resistance
Mm.
higher, and you're going to have higher production of IGF-1 sometimes as well. So, if we can break down our food, assimilate it, and get it into our bodies correctly, we should have better glucose control. We should have
Yep.
less metabolites floating around our blood, less misdigested proteins. We will have less food available for a dysbiotic gut microbiome, which therefore will improve your bacteria balance. And then you'll have more amino acids to actually repair your skin, your hair, your nails, all these things. Not to mention, you get to start eating more foods that you already wanted to eat that you probably would have struggled to reintroduce.
Well, yeah, just going back to the whole insulin resistance and the glucose part, for me, when I would try to eat like high protein, I would literally have this ridiculous issues with my blood sugar. And I felt better eating more protein. I felt like I had more energy. I slept better. I just felt healthier when I had more protein. However, the issue with my blood sugar was kind of freaking me out a little bit, because I would hover, in the low 100s. And I'm like, this is kind of creeping up towards pre-diabetic, which is not something that you want when you don't want that. And so that was actually a surprise side effect of working on my stomach acid and working specifically on my enzymatic function, was that I saw those blood glucose numbers go down, and I was able to continue to eat the protein that was making me feel really good. So I think people are just like scared of protein, and there's this whole, obviously you don't go crazy with the protein and only eat protein. Don't eat, you need some fat to balance that out. You can't just eat straight protein. But I think there's a little bit of and there, you can see some of my old videos, there's like a fear factor of me, oh, don't eat too much protein, you're going to have high blood sugar, because it was happening to me. But then when I started working on my gut and the digestive function, I didn't have that problem anymore. And like you said, it definitely plays into the skin, because then you're able to actually use those amino acids that help your skin, help your hair, correct?
Correct. Yep. So, um, amino acids are essentially the building blocks of most of the body. I mean, along
Mm-hmm.
with cholesterol, fatty acids, things like this. But you don't get great skin, great hair, great nails unless you've already rebuilt any cells in your brain, your heart, your lungs. Like your body's gonna, if it gets 100 extra amino acids to spread about, and you're having some high inflammation turnover in your gut, or high, some sort of inflammation in your secretory system in your veins or something, it's going to put those amino acids to use, trying to figure out how to reproduce those cells so they're not inflamed and they're not damaged. And it's going to starve your hair, your skin, your nails, things that are more superficial in orientation or sexual preference style, adaptive systems in the body. And so, people don't realize that it's as much about amino acid digestion and amino acid turnover as it is anything else. If you want to improve these systems and you want to like have the symbols of Western sex culture looking really great.
Right. And we did a whole episode on hair, which was,
Yeah.
I mean, I was amazed at how many people were like, I'm losing hair, I have these hair issues. I mean, it's a big, big problem right now. I think post COVID too, a lot of people are having issues where they've been losing hair. And so again, this is another thing that can help support that process, because yeah, when you start losing hair, it usually means that something's not right. Definitely something not right at all.
Yeah, and it's not just amino acid. There's inflammation around the hair follicles.
Right.
Where is their hair follicle? It's in the skin. It's inflammation at the skin layer. So you're probably not having hair loss without having other issues somewhere else on your skin. I mean, you might,
Right.
but that
Right.
might be your skin. That might be your rash. That might be your acne. Whereas
Yep.
somebody else's genetics and someone else's epigenetics pushes it towards a rash. Yours gets pushed towards hair loss. So it's
Right.
not, I mean, this isn't that complex. I mean, it is crazy complex, but it's also, there's ways to make it less complex, and that's one of them, is just to see that the hair and the skin are directly in each other's business all day long, and one issue with one is a potential issue with somebody else.
Right. So things are going to express differently. Like when we talk about how the skin looks, someone might get, like for me, I had the really bad eczema. Someone else that might show up as psoriasis. Someone else that might show up as something like rosacea, would you say?
Yeah, totally. Your genetics are, your family history and your genetics do matter, and
Hmm.
you you can escape the expression of these genetics, and you can delay their um, expression, meaning turning them on towards a pathway that you don't want. But we all have weak links. We have a family history that comes down our
Hmm.
lineage, and that will be your fate if you drive towards dysbiotic bacteria, disrupted gut, and inflammation. And for some people, that's rosacea. Some people, that's eczema. Some people, that's premature balding.
Hmm.
It's not, it's really rare to have someone just having hair issues, but the rest of the family doesn't have hair issues. Like that
Right.
actually is even more concerning. If that happens, that's even more concerning to me than you looking through your family lineage and be like, oh, shoot, grandma had eczema, mom kind of dealt with it, but doesn't really have it. And now I have it. Like that happens for a reason. But it's based on genetics and epigenetics. We can
Right.
tailor those epigenetics, the on off of those genetics, through our gut, through our diet, through our supplements. And so that's the hopeful message, and that's the important message.
I agree. And it's funny. I just came from a doctor's appointment for my 28-week pregnancy checkup, and they were like, God, you have the best hair. Those pregnancy hormones are really making your hair gorgeous. And I'm like, honey, my hair looked like this before I got pregnant. I've had this hair ever since I've been taking care of my digestive system and eating the right foods, eating enough protein. Like, I appreciate the compliment, but this definitely, and they were like, oh, and those prenatals, which this is a whole other conversation. This is not medical advice, but I'm not even taking prenatals. I'm taking like different organ supplements mixed together. I have my own prenatal concoction, so I'm not taking any of that stuff. But it just goes to show that the health of your gut is going to show up on the outside. People are going to see your hair, they're going to see your skin, and they can kind of tell what's going on inside. The good news is that we can fix these things. We're not stuck because, you look at, I've got a couple sisters and they think I'm crazy as hell, but we're all around, I'm the oldest by about 5 years. And then there's one in the middle, and then there's the youngest. We all had this crazy thick hair growing up. But since, about the mid 30s, there's been a little tailor off because I'm the one who's the psycho about health and nutrition and all the crazy stuff that I do. And they're starting to have the thinning hair. All of a sudden their hair, both of them, is starting to thin. They're starting to have some skin stuff come on. And I'm like, well, that's when the epigenetic part comes in, right?
Yeah, totally. And I wouldn't call you psycho. You just have different value systems.
Yeah.
I mean, how many professional athletes of any sport are over 35? It is
Oh, right.
it's a rare amount in any sport. I don't care if it's tennis, soccer, basketball, baseball, not that many. The best, most genetically gifted, plus they've also done a lot of work to make their bodies as healthy as possible. So they have the best genetics, plus they have like the best care, hopefully, to get past 35, and they're still
Mm-hmm.
petering out at 40, 42, 43. So if you're over 35, like both of us are, you've got to reorient, and your values on health and vitality and maybe vanity, whatever. If those are your values, you got to realize that every decade that goes by from 35, 45,
Mm-hmm.
55, 65, you're almost doubling down on your budget and your time spent to stay healthy and well, because there's a sort of a decay. There's a decay in
Mm-hmm.
everything.
Mitochondrial function. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, gut,
mitochondrial function is going
mitochondria,
down. That's
stomach acid,
zoom way
everything.
out. Yep, exactly.
And
Yep.
so the baseline, to just keep your baseline, like if you just want to keep your hair strong, you just want to keep your skin clear, if you want to keep the weight off, whatever it might be, every decade that goes by after 35, it's going to require more efforting. You can build it
Mm-hmm.
into your daily life, and you can make it so it's not effort. Like I said, I mean, I personally don't use shampoo, conditioner, deodorant. I don't, other than a moisturizer, I don't use that every day. So I save a lot of money on this other way
Mm-hmm.
of doing life,
Yep.
the other way of doing Western life. And I can reorient that money towards supplements, food, exercise, living in a nice environment that's, free of toxins, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So there are ways to build your life around this kind of thing. But I think it's really important for people to realize that, like, look, you can't, a lot of people can't pill their way out of this. If you have great genetics,
No.
you might be able to pill your way out of it till 60, but then it's definitely going downhill.
Yeah, I mean, ever since I've turned 40 3 years ago, I've been thinking like I am kind of training for being older. Like that's how I've been looking at my life, and it's like, what am I doing today to feel my best at 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, beyond, like what I'm eating, my lifestyle. And like you said, the low tox, like everyone thinks I'm crazy again, but I don't use shampoo and conditioner on my hair. I use water and eggs. And it looks like this. And I know it's because of healthy gut, healthy insides. And so, and I don't use the skin products. I use a little bit of all natural mascara, and that's it. And so, yeah, we feel like we have to buy all these, different products to make ourselves beautiful. But if we're not starting with the health from the inside, if we're not starting with our gut and how we treat the body, then all the products in the world is just kind of like the old saying, putting lipstick on a on a pig. It's not gonna do what you want it to do, right?
Yeah, I mean the proof is looking at your friends, your family, and seeing like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, they do things that way. Does the topical application for long-term skin health work? And I would say the
Yeah.
results are pretty dismal. I mean, you can do some really cool stuff around, like I said, reducing fine lines, increasing water retention, basically anti-aging to the skin, increasing
Yeah.
collagen production. These things are real from a topical standpoint. But if you're
Oh
trying
yeah.
to get at things that are driven by immune dysregulation and inflammation,
You got to deal with that first.
yeah, you got to go from the inside out. I mean, yeah,
Yeah. I mean,
there's
I
no
do red
topical.
light therapy on my face and a green tea vitamin C serum. So I do some extra stuff, but if I was doing that, but I wasn't taking care of my inside, it's really not going to make that big of a difference. There's foundational things that you have to do for your health.
Yeah, yeah, it's a both and so that's what I'm saying. You're using anti-aging style stuff like vitamin
Right.
C's or hyaluronic acids, things like that. You're not necessarily using like these really intense cleansers, these really intense
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
antimicrobial agents.
Nope.
Um, there's like toners and modifiers. Like
Mm-hmm.
you can get like 5, 6 step systems that cost $100 or $200 a
Mm-hmm.
month that I don't think are needed personally.
Yeah.
If you're taking care of your body from the inside out, you can skip that stuff and go to the fun stuff, which is like, like you said, your vitamin C, green tea stuff, or your red
Yep.
light, or
Yep.
maybe some hyaluronic masks or whatever it is that you're into.
Yep.
But that's, you don't have to do all these blackhead charcoal masks and all these other,
Mm-mm.
if you're gonna pay for facial treatments, maybe you're paying for, I don't know, some sort of red laser therapies or some sort of cool
Mm-hmm.
therapies that are around collagen production and skin health, not necessarily treating, lesions, bumps, bruises, rashes, those types of things. Because I believe
Absolutely.
the majority of that you can get through healing the body from the inside out and choosing a diet that's aligned with your health and your genetics.
Absolutely. And I guess just kind of wrapping up, would you say that leaky gut plays into this as well? Because we've kind of covered everything else, but would you say leaky gut kind of plays into skin health as well? And so that's kind of last on the list that you'd look at repairing?
Uh, yeah, I mean, so leaky gut is the portal to the inflammatory immune system channel.
Mm.
So think of leaky gut as like opening a giant portal between your gut and your skin that just dumping anti-inflammatory, like, here, make another pimple, here, make more rashes, here, be drier, here, be red and bumpy and veiny. Like leaky gut is sort of that channel from the gut to the skin to have it be things we don't want it to be. So reducing leaky gut is helping with not allowing the peptides to accumulate. It's reducing inflammation. It's getting the right nutrients in your body to make the skin and everything that we need. So it is really, really important. The nice thing about improving your stomach acid and your enzymes is you're taking away some of the preconditions that allow leaky gut to fester. And yes,
Mm.
if you don't see resolution of your food sensitivities, of your skin related issues, it's likely due to leaky gut. And that comes back to mucous membranes, butyrate production, and those types of things. That's where Tributyrin X would be really helpful. If you have histamine related issues, this is also,
Mm.
some people have, they don't get rashes unless they eat food, like they eat
Mm-hmm.
strawberries
That's
or
histamine.
fish.
Yep.
And so if you're somebody like that, you know that about yourself, then yes, I would go right to Tributyrin X right after holoimmune, or start it right away, because that's probably the nicest way I've seen to help reduce those symptoms quickly. So
Yep.
it's not, everybody doesn't need it, but for certain presentations, it can help right away.
Awesome. Very cool. So anybody that's interested in anything that Steve and I talked about today, it's all going to be linked down in the show notes. And I always, anytime we do a chat, I say the only reason why I talk about these products is that if they don't work, you can get your money back. You can actually send them back, get your money back. And I appreciate that because I think I talked about it last time. I'm moving right now and literally have I'm throwing away so much stuff, so many supplements that I've bought over the years. We've been here 15 years, 14 years. And so you can imagine the amount of stuff that's accumulated that I never used, that didn't work. Your products are not part of the trash. I've been keeping those and definitely using the enzymes during pregnancy. That's helped a lot during pregnancy. So, yeah, just if you guys are interested in anything we talk about, that's all linked down there. And this has been a great discussion about skin health. Anything else you want to add, Steve?
I mean, just remember that, in my opinion, skin as well as all these beauty symptoms are typically signs of underlying good gut function, good hormone function, good mitochondrial function. So if you're struggling with these things, and these are what you think about at the end of the day or in the morning when you look in the mirror, know that usually they're some of the last things to get better. That's why I said 6 months, 9 months, a year. You should start seeing benefit at 60 days. But before that, you should also notice that your stools are better, your gas bloating's better, you can tolerate more foods, you feel more energetic, your sleep might improve. All those things will happen first. And then in another little while, that's when the skin, the hair, the nail starts to pop off and really glow. Because again, those things are signs, in my world, at least if you look at it from a sexual biology perspective, they're signs that you're really healthy on the inside. And so they are typically will get soothed, but to get full recovery will take a while until the rest of your body reorients towards anti-inflammatory, the right microbiome, healthy gut function where you can get the right nutrients from your food, all these things.
Awesome. Well, it's very helpful. And thanks again for coming on today, Steve. We'll have to figure out a new topic for next month.
All right. Sounds good, Sarah.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for watching. I'll see you guys again really soon.